Hi, good afternoon. So I just started to do this live it's not live. Somebody asked me why I don't do more live videos, and the reason is, well, there's two reasons. One, I need a better phone. My phone is not great, and so Instagram doesn't always work well on my phone. And the other reason is that I need to bribe my IT guy to get me better Wi-Fi up here in my office. I'm not that far from our Wi-Fi disc thing. It's like downstairs in a closet, which is not that far from here, but I might as well be on the other side of the moon. It doesn't work great up here. So I don't always have a great connection, and sometimes when I'm doing a live video, it gets that, you know what I'm talking about? Like the picture gets all pixelated. That's what I'm looking for, pixelated. And so I don't want that for you. I want you to have a good, clear picture when we're here talking. So I pre-record most of my videos, even if all I do is just share it right away after I'm done talking. So anyhow, I'm doing this video, and I don't know if you can hear it, but I can. Right as I started talking, somebody right on the other side of this wall right here started leaf blowing outside, so if you can hear that, I'm really sorry. But that's not why I came here to talk to you today. So the reason why I hopped on here to talk today, two things actually, and they're both related. I wanted to talk about how when our kids come out as transgender, most of the time, because I know this is not true for everybody, and even a few of you have already commented in the posts I've shared this week, so I'm going to say most of the time, our children are still the same people that they have always been the whole time, right? So one of the things that, and I didn't understand that when my son Leo came out as transgender. That first day that Leo came out, I have shared this before, he came out in a Facebook post that I read in the wee hours of the morning before everybody else was out of bed. And so because I had a lot of time by myself to think about what those words meant, and I didn't understand what they meant, and I didn't understand what transgender meant, and I didn't get to have a conversation with Leo about it right away. All kinds of stuff went through my head, right? Like I have anxiety, and I am kind of like sometimes a worst case thinker that kind of goes along with the anxiety. And so on that day, in those hours and that morning, I thought my son is somebody else, right? Because I didn't know what else to think. I was like, my child is a different person, and I don't know what's going to happen when he comes down those stairs today, now with new pronouns and a new name, and now he's transgender, and what does that even mean? And now I have a different kid than I had yesterday. Well, I mean, that wasn't even true. When he came downstairs that morning, he was dressed in the same pajama clothes that he wore every day, and he had the same things for breakfast that he had, and made his coffee and slumped in our chair in the family room, curled up in the same position that he did every morning, and got on his phone and did whatever, talked to me the same way that he always had. Like, nothing about him had changed. Not like nothing, except for that he wanted us to call him a different name and use different pronouns. Like, he still liked the same music that he always had. He still liked the same foods that he always had. He still thought the same jokes that my husband makes were funny. Side note, they're not funny. Like, so he still had his same sense of humor. Like, he was fundamentally the same person that he had always been. He just was outwardly presenting differently. He was not yet, but going to be changing his style of dressing, right? He was going to discover what his personal style was. Like, we all go through that at different phases of our lives. What does our personal style look like? How do we present ourselves to the world? What was his hairstyle going to look like? It was, he was going to change that. We all go through that sometimes, especially in our teenage years or, our adult years. What was his hairstyle going to look like? And then so those things changed, which, if you think about, those aren't drastic changes really, except for they can be if you're used to seeing your child dressing in a certain way and wearing their hair in a certain way, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is, different and new. And that's the key, right? It's different and it's new, and it can be startling at first, but the thing is you get used to it. And you get used to seeing your child in different clothes and with a different hairstyle. And just like with using a new name and pronouns, it's startling and new at first, and it's weird for your mouth and your brain to say a new name and pronouns, especially if your child is a teenager or a young adult, because you've had a long history of using a certain name or pronouns with your child, and so your muscle memory of your brain and your mouth is used to saying and thinking about your child in a certain way, and it takes some time to getting used to saying a new name and pronouns. But the thing is you get used to it, right? And so your child is still your child. And I know for some of you that is not true. I know for some of you, your child, once they've come out as transgender, have gone through a transformation, and they have not just changed outwardly, but they have changed inwardly. And sometimes that change is positive. And I know because I've talked to some of you and you've told me what a drastic change it has made in your child's life for them to come out as transgender. How knowing their truth has made them happier and whole and just so much better, because living as their untrue selves was making their lives so miserable, right? Having to hide who they were from the world was just devastating them. And so coming out is the thing that made their lives better. And so there was a big change for the better for your child. But I also know that from talking to some of you, that your children changed inwardly in a way that you don't recognize. And it may be a struggle for you to see your child in that way that you don't recognize, and it's not always for the good. And your child could be going through a lot of different things. It could be a mental health struggle. It could be an identity struggle. They're still struggling to come to terms with their identity. They may not be at peace with it yet. That could be part of it. They may have had so much tied to who they were that this transition to who they are, right? Because remember, being transgender is who they are. It's who they've always been. They may just not have known it yet. And so this is just upheaved their world in such a way that they don't know what to do about it yet. And so they just are in an internal struggle with that. And depending on how old they are, there could be hormone situation going on and those mood swings and all of that. And so your child could just be in a place where you look at them and you're like, I don't recognize my own kid. And you think that it's tied to them being transgender. And that may not be the exact cause, right? So you want to be careful. I don't like to give advice, right? I just want to say this. So I want you to take this with a grain of all the salt and all the grace that I can give you. And I just want to say this, just be careful about how you think about your child and who they are and what they're going through, and don't jump to the conclusion that what's going on with your child is necessarily because of them coming out as transgender. I just want to say that, okay? Because it there's a saying about how I can't, and I'll botch it, so I don't even want to try. But like it's like causation, and I'm talking about like the whatever the cause is does not necessitate the. I can't even speak today, but your child being transgender is not necessarily the reason for what you're seeing with them, with their behavior and their situation. It could very well be that the timing of it looks like that, but there could be a lot of other things going on, is all I'm saying. Okay, that's all I want to say about that. The other thing I want to talk about today, and I only want to talk about this because it's kind of related a little bit, and I don't want to forget to talk about it, is that it has to do with your kid being who they are, right? And how they have always been who they are. There has been a lot of media out there lately about transgender kids and how there seems to be like more transgender kids than there ever has been, which, first of all, that's false. It's just false. And how the media and social media and the fact that we have the internet now is causing like this surge of transgender people. And I just want to come on here and state for the record that there have always been transgender people going back to like biblical times. Like they have always been there. People just were not aware that they were out there. One, because it's been dangerous for people to be outwardly in the open about their gender identity in the past. I mean, it is now, again, ish. We're trying to have all these legislations, bills and stuff that are going against transgender people. And these are the reasons why in the past, like 50 years or so, we have not heard as much about transgender people as we are hearing now since, like, say, 2015. And so, and my son Leo talked about that in our live video that we did a little bit. You can go back and listen to that. It's in my feed. And so the thing about it is, though, is that transgender kids are transgender from the time that they're born, and they either know it when they're young, or they have a realization about it once they're older. And what happens is, like, it's like they have like an aha moment, or they're watching a movie, probably not a movie, there's not a whole lot of movies out there, but they're having a conversation with somebody who's sharing about their experience with their gender identity, or they're reading a book or having a book read to them when they're in grade school or middle school, or they're on social media or the internet, and all of a sudden they read something and they're like, oh, that's me too. And they recognize themselves in the conversation or in the book or in the social media clip or whatever. And all of a sudden, the thing that they couldn't put their finger on before because they didn't have the knowledge and the understanding about it, all of a sudden it makes sense. And I have shared about this before about my own son, about how he knew something about himself wasn't quite clicking, and he just didn't know what it was because he didn't have the language for it until he was in middle school. And so sometimes it's puberty, and sometimes hormones will be the thing that is the catalyst for people. And sometimes they're a little bit older. But there's always a catalyst for a transgender person to be like, oh, this is who I am, and now I understand it. And it either happens when they're young, or it happens when they're a little older, or it happens when they're much older, but it always happens eventually. And the fact that people say, well, if we didn't have social media, or if my kid hadn't seen it on Twitter, he wouldn't be transgender. No. If he hadn't heard about whatever the thing was that he saw or listened to or whatever, he'd still be transgender. He just wouldn't be able to tell you about it until much later, and he might suffer longer because something internally with him would be saying something is not right here. There's an unhappiness here. And so because he saw that thing on social media or Twitter or whatever, he was able to have the language to say, oh, me too, and here's now what I know about myself, and now I can have words to be able to tell you so that you can understand this about me too. Social media has been the thing that has given a voice to our kids so that they can turn around and tell us, hey, here's what I need to know, here's what I need you to know about me so that you can support me and love me in the way that I need to be loved. It's not the thing that's making our kids transgender, because guess what? They have always been that way. And I want to just read something from this book, and I shared about this book, I don't know, sometime last month, and there is a review for it up on my website. If you have not read it already, look, all the flags, right? It's called The Conscious Parent's Guide to Gender Identity, and it's by Darlene Tando. And I already talked about how I love this book. And if you are the parent of a transgender or non-binary or gender fluid or gender curious child, just go buy the book. I paid, I don't know, the book price says $14.99. I think I got mine on Amazon. It probably was like a couple dollars cheaper. But listen to this. I'm going to read to you out of this book. I don't normally read out of books ever, but this is important. It's in the chapter called, it's in chapter 6, Parenting the Transgender Child. It's not quite what this is about. It's about conscious awareness, right? And it talks about catalysts, which is what made me think I wanted to talk about this today. On page 91, so that we have we're doing this properly, credits here. For those who are not consciously aware of being transgender in early childhood, a catalyst often triggers self-awareness. See, I even got the word right. The means by which someone may be triggered into understanding their true gender identity could be other transgender people, mainstream media, books, and of course, information found on the internet. Some parents lament the existence of the internet, feeling certain that if it did not exist, their child will never have learned about this topic and would therefore not be transgender. And I just want to pause a second. Every single week, somebody sends me a message or an email, and in that email, I hear that same exact thing. If my kid didn't see it on Twitter or it's Twitter or TikTok, and I'm not even on TikTok, so I don't know what's going on over there, but those are the two. Now, I get 99.9% of messages are from parents who are like, thank you so much for the stuff that you share. It has been so helpful and so supportive. And every once in a while, at least once a week, I get a random one-off email of someone who is convinced that the internet has made their child transgender. It's a true story. The truth of the matter is that their child would still be transgender, but they may not be consciously aware of it or know what options are available to them until much later, which I believe is true for my son also. This is not necessarily a good thing. For those who feel the need to transition, early medical intervention can be very beneficial. For those who identify as non-binary or otherwise under the transgender umbrella, They may come to understand their gender identity and how to ask others to respect it much earlier than they may otherwise have. A catalyst does not cause the existence of something, it simply allows for awareness of something that exists. I want to read that again. A catalyst does not cause the existence of something, it simply allows for awareness of something that exists. Your child, just in case you don't understand that, did not come to be transgender because they learned about it on the internet. I cannot say that enough times. Your child is transgender because that's how they were born. And I know that it's a lot to understand that. And I know that it takes a long time to get there to that understanding. And I know that because it took me a long time to get to that understanding also. I thought that for a brief minute, or maybe 5 or 10, as I thought through all the things that my son had been through in the last year before he came out, in different identities that he tried on during that year, maybe he was just trying on another one. And it didn't last long, that thought, because I was like, I knew in my heart, when I read those words about my son being transgender, my heart knew that that was true. Even though my brain had to do some thinking about it, because you have to think about all the things, like think about the words, think about what it means, my heart already knew. And so I thought about the last year and all of the identities that he had tried on. And before I even got to the end of the thinking, what made sense in my brain was he was trying on all those identities because he hadn't gotten to the one that was right for him yet, right? And so as I was having that process, where I started with first before I got to that realization, is maybe he's just trying on a new identity because he's tried on other ones in the past. And that's what got me to that he hadn't got to the one that was right for him yet. And so it can be easy to think when your child first comes out, well, this is just a phase. This is just something that, that they're doing because it seems like everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is not doing it. Like I forget what, we talked about the statistics last week, or whatever week it was, a couple weeks ago, Leo and I, in our video. It's like 1% of the population is transgender. It's like 1 to 3% that's gay or lesbian, but 1% of the entire population of the United States is transgender. If you think about how many people that live in the United States are, 1% is a very small number. So we're not talking about a lot of people here. Everybody is not doing it. It's not trendy to be transgender. If you think about all the heartache and grief that transgender people have to go through in their lives, why would somebody choose that? Why would somebody get out of bed one day and be like, you know what? I think I'm going to be transgender today because I want to have to fight over which bathroom I get to use when I go out in public, and I want to have my rights to good medical care taken away from me, and I want to have to be humiliated and all these things, like every single day for the rest of my life. Not just once in a while, but like every day for the rest of my life. Who would choose that? Who would choose that? Nobody chooses that. Transgender people are not just trying on an identity because it's trendy. Okay, I clearly have gone off on a tangent that I did not intend when I sat down here to start this video. So, and it's like, we're talking like 25 minutes now. So if you have stuck here with me to the end of this video, I applaud you for being here this long. And I'm going to shut up now and go have some lunch because it's already late and way past my lunchtime. So thank you for being here today. And I will see you again next week. Okay, bye.